back in the year 1653. The idea that the Earth revolved around the sun was not in line with the predominant position held by the Church at the time, which led to
Hey,
Galileo
maybe we
ultimately
can go
being
to
charged with
Smuggler's
heresy.
Bay
On the
next
other hand,
because
two of the
that's
most
where
significant
one of the
achievements of the 20th
treasure
century,
ones
namely
is.
the creation of the
Where one of
atomic
the
bomb and
treasure
the moon
things are.
landing, were only possible because of the vast
That's
funding
a lot of
capabilities
treasure.
of the world's largest superpower that used these projects
We
to
can
fight
get
two
7
separate
treasure
wars.
chests.
Just about as political
We
as you
get
can
7
get.
whole
All three
treasure
examples
chests.
feature different power structures
That's a
to this
lot.
day,
Look.
but it's the same concept.
Count that many.
Obviously, there's
That's
certainly a
7.
very large debate about the moral
Count the
justifications and
X's.
motivations behind each of these events. Most obviously, the incomparable death toll that resulted from the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But if you really need a clear-cut, indisputable example of a moment in history when political prejudices
See,
held
is that
back
7?
scientific progress and then directly resulted in the deaths of millions, then you need to look no
That's a
further
lot
than
of
the AIDS
money.
epidemic of the 1980s. Make no mistake, millions of people died unnecessarily
Normally
because the
ones,
official steps of
usually
Reagan
ones get
administration
released
barred government
$1,000.
scientists from
So
addressing
that's like
what was rapidly becoming
$7,000.
an epidemic. So don't fucking
That's a lot of
pretend like
dollars.
science somehow exists in a vacuum and operates independently from the rest of society, because it clearly doesn't.
Money,
and you're
money.
being intentionally ignorant and obtuse
Hey,
if you believe anything.
have you ever done the
Bill didn't make
merchant
science
alliances
political.
ones? I've never
Society
done
did.
one of those. After this one, do you want to do that one?
Now,
I've
accusations
never
like these
done
are
a
a
merchant
different beast
alliance.
entirely, because they so clearly draw attention to the fact that people
I've
making
watched
them
a
have no
tutorial,
understanding of how the
and it
scientific
basically
method
said,
actually carry out.
what you
Like
gotta
at all.
do
It
is,
stems from the misconception that science isn't allowed to contradict
you gotta
itself.
find these
only build on
items
itself.
all
Nothing
around.
in science,
So
and I
then
mean
you gotta
nothing,
find like
can ever
chickens
be
or gunpowder
100%
barrels and stuff,
definitively proven. 10,000
gotta
examples
find
that do
those,
support the predictions of the scientific
and
model
then
are
put them
irrelevant
in
if
the
you find even a
things,
single example that doesn't.
and then
Maybe the
take it
theory
back
is
to the
99%
merchant
wrong, or
alliance
it just needs to be
person
fine-tuned
to
a
sell
little
them to
bit.
get
In
money.
either case,
I
the
think
goal of science is to constantly be improving our
think it's the
understanding.
most.
The idea that it's somehow
You think that's the most
critical to change
safest way? I think it's the
problem is
safest
so
way.
ludicrous that it drives
Okay,
me crazy
because
every
you don't
time I see
actually
it
have
brought
to
up.
fight.
When Newton's laws
And
of
I
gravity,
figured
one
out
of the
a
most
way to
celebrated accomplishments in
it
all of
said I know
physics, failed to account for
it knows a
minuscule
way to
deviations in the
make
observed
snakes
trajectories
not
of
attack
planets.
you. It's very
Einstein's theory
simple.
of relativity was developed to correct for this. When Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis suggested that maybe, just maybe,
had to get a
doctors
flu.
wash their hands before surgery to prevent infection, he
How'd
was
you get a
turned
flu
into a
then?
laughingstock and died in an asylum.
How
From
did-
an infection! The entire history of science is based on people spending decades of their lives in feuds trying to disprove each other. The people who got the Nobel Prize for finding evidence of the Big Bang were in the middle of attempting to disprove it. The amount of repetition, rigor, and intensive peer review in today's science institutions doesn't
Can you
leave
put
much
on your
room for error.
costume?
Claims aren't
Go
just
into
thrown out
the
into the void without years of
shipping
verification
and
from thousands
change
of
to your
individuals who are often
costume.
working on directly opposing theories. If your result can't be repeated by
And
other
the-
researchers, it
I
doesn't
think that
mean
eye
shit.
is right
All
there.
of this is to say that if 99% of scientists agree on something, you should absolutely
Actually,
take their
we're
word
all
for
there.
it. So
That's-
no,
that's-
Bill isn't a
that's-
hypocrite
that's the
sellout for
island.
changing his stance on GMOs, and he isn't a social
So,
justice white knight because he explained that
This
our
is gonna be
understanding of
4
topics,
people
expression,
here.
sexuality,
4
and
people
gender
that we
is
have to
still
kill.
very new and always expanding.
Hey.
And maybe a 6th grade explanation of a concept in the probability episode
4.
of his TV show from a decade where gay marriage still wasn't even
There's a
legal
spatula.
might not be the gotcha moment you think it is. Also, this image is fake.
Buddy, how
Very,
did you get a
very fake. He
spatula
never said
sword?
this, but even if he did, my point is, new research that indicates that this conclusion is false is
That
a
is-
perfectly
is that
valid
your
reason
sword
to change
weapon?
his views.
A
He's trying to
spatula?
save the world by changing minds the same way he changed his.
Come
By
on,
looking
man.
at data, by talking to experts, and by seeing the negative consequences of ignoring science firsthand. We need a show that can help educate people more than ever now. But he blew it
That's
because
funny.
this man lacks empathy.
At least mine
It's easy
actually
to get
has
frustrated by people
blades.
who, from your point of view, aren't listening. to
Mine
you.
is a
Flat
skull.
earthers are a very good
Mine
example.
is a
It doesn't matter how much
normal
evidence you
sword,
present
but with
for
the
someone to
skull
genuinely
in it,
believe that the
like,
Earth is flat in this day
stacked
and age,
upwards,
when we photograph it
and
from
with
space,
some
it has to
golden teeth
indicate
and
they
a
have some
golden
serious
eyeball.
distrust of authority, and they are deliberately choosing to be either ignorant or in denial. Those people can't be winning. But your uncle, who doesn't understand the difference between weather and climate, or your aunt who still worry about the debunked vaccines causes autism study, have a slim, but still realistic chance of being reasonable. But you have to
I hit
treat
the
these
captain,
people
I
with
hit the captain.
concerns that may seem ridiculous to you,
Captain.
but to them they are real.
Okay,
Prove
these
them
are
wrong,
shadows.
but do it
Wait,
so
these
they'll
are
actually
shadows.
reconsider their worldview. Keeping that in mind, there are two absolutely
Oh,
necessary
God,
elements
these do a lot of
that
damage.
the
I
slimmest hopes of
forgot I was staying on board. I think I gotta stay on board.
Let's take a
Stay
look at the
on
mic.
board. Because I'm like a
Tendency in
zero.
skeptic circles
I have
to
like
wave
a
any
quarter health
unscientific
left.
arguments away by pointing to the general concept of science as if that's somehow a sufficient counterpoint. But when what really is happening is breaking it down and understanding exactly how science agrees, and then
I hit him,
explaining that
I hit
to
him.
the person you
Stand back,
argue
I
with.
hit him.
Science is a
Laughing.
process, a means to an end, not an end-all be-all authority.
Oh, I
And a lot
destroyed
of
him.
people
Did you see him
just
blow up?
it
That
is
was
meant to be questioned because vast portions of it are untrue. If a man
Oh,
with
shot
wacky
him,
hair
shot him
walked
in
up
the
to the
kneecap.
bar and told you that time slows down the faster you move, you'd probably think he's crazy.
Okay,
That
I'm
man's
coming
name?
up-
No, but
I'm
actually,
coming
his
up
name
there,
was
I'm coming up.
Einstein, and people did call him crazy, but his
Wait,
name
wait,
is now the
wait, I'm
go-to
coming up
synonym
there,
for
dude.
genius because he backed up that assertion with mathematical proof.
What?
And later, astronomer Arthur Eddington backed it up with observation. So if someone questions a scientific
I'm
justification,
gonna bring the tribe to
use
help
that
us.
justification education, you should be able to back it up with an explanation, experiment, and results. If you can't, then it's wrong.
Wait up,
Simple as
don't,
that.
don't,
And it's frustrating to watch a show that claims to be a celebration of
Wait up for
science, but
me.
never puts in the work of
Uh-huh.
helping
I wanna use
justify
the
or
trident.
explain any of what it does. Science is a perfectly valid justification for taking multiple chances. It's not easy to assume that the word is best to make as if that somehow makes your case for you. Okay,
What are
cool.
you doing
Now let's talk about the
there?
sex shop
The
song. It's
captain?
not outright awful, but
Captain?
it's still pretty bad. Number one, because it was shockingly disappointing sound from the otherwise fantastic Rachel Bloom. But number two, because it was just utterly devoid of any sort of technical concept to support what was by far the most controversial
lost
episode
the
of the entire season. They had to know it was going to be controversial, right? But they had to. This interview quote from Bill makes me think that they either knew and were too lazy to change it, or genuinely didn't know, and neither of those options paints their picture about education or education. The big problem with the sex drum song isn't that it's awkward and uncomfortable, even though it's both those things. It's that it's awkward and uncomfortable and a
Help
waste
me,
of
you
everything.
numbskull.
It doesn't teach you. Haha, cool. Bill Nye said the sex word right in the childhood. Am I right, folks? No, you had a clownfish balloon on screen for all of 10 seconds, and it was more informative than the sex junk song and the ice cream cartoon combined. Clownfish are a fairly straightforward example of hermaphroditic species, with quite commonly seen male fish transform their reproductive organs to become female once the previous female fish in the family unit dies or leaves. And that's a
Kill them
cool
with a
lesson. That's a
spatula.
cool, fun fact. Talk about that. Mention it. Literally do anything but
Hey,
this.
can you
If you
go
want to
and
make a
bring the
politically driven
ancient
science
chest?
show, then I'm all for
Here.
that. But don't be surprised
Go
when people
bring
get
the
on your
ancient
ass and all
chest
you did was
so-
sing about
so we
power
can put 'em
bottoms
up,
and
okay?
bagels for some reason. This show
I
is
want
so
to take
concerned with
multiple
trying to be
trips
funny
up
and
this,
edgy
so
that it comes at
can you
direct
go bring
expense
the
of
both
supporting the
ancient
science
chests?
that should be its foundation. So let's say you broke down a topic as thoroughly as
chests.
possible so that no more ambiguity remains. You literally could not have been more persuasive in a technical sense. None of that really matters if you're going to be a condescending prick the whole time. That's where the panels
I think
10 minutes of
we
circle
should do
jerking with the occasional opposing viewpoints
Oh,
turning
well,
up without anyone ever actually
Yeah.
debunking or acknowledging anything they say. One out of 3 panelists is either a B-list
What?
celebrity with at best a slim connection to the subject matter, or someone who was likely brought in so they can be dogpiled on.
Let's
Like
put
in the
these things in the
pseudoscience episode,
chest.
they have an astrologist on who never claims to practice it as a scientist. He views it as an art form. I don't personally agree that what he does really holds any value as an art form, but that's an entirely separate discussion. Why have him on the panel if you aren't going to listen to what he's arguing? Your open disdain for this man is approaching hostility, and it isn't fun or informative to watch. And do you remember our healing crystal fanatic
he's
from
back
before?
inside?
Because I sure do. And oh man, do I bet Bill regrets having him on.
What I'm
What's your
saying is
favorite
just because
ship?
we don't understand something yet doesn't mean it doesn't work. And I think crystals, if you go
Your
to
favorite
places
ship
like
in this
Sedona
game?
that sit on
Also,
a
I have
crystal
to use
bed,
the
and if you
restroom
are like
over
an
there, right?
Crystals are just really pretty geometric
Crystals.
arrangements of atoms. That's all they are. There is literally no mechanism for them to interact with your body unless you want to claim that they're somehow supposed to go inside your body. However,
Yeah,
if
that's
the
right,
crystal
inside the body, you know.
well, in that case, there are far
In an
more
orifice.
controlled ways to use radiation for medical purposes than to shove a crystal in someone's face. And if what's-his-face wants to claim that there is, then the burden of proof is on him. Now that's a lot to say in a short amount of time, and I didn't expect Bill to be able to do that on the spot, but I did expect him to muster better than a C.
This episode is sponsored by Brilliant. Learn to think.
Oh no.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
I'm going to
Oh
tell you
no.
stories about
The
science.
Frank.
Goodness.
Before I do, let's
The
try and see
babies.
things from the perspective
The
of the fungus.
babies.
Here is a fungus baby, or spore.
Baby.
And one of the first things it needs to do is
Baby.
find food. So it often creates a
I've
spore
recorded
bed
some of
that
this
makes up
kid
all the
so I can
spore
show him
bed.
to
What is
you.
it? A germ tube?
Yeah.
Alright, well, you can see the contents of the spore sort of oozing out in the germ tube, which tries to find food. Now, like the Doritos, some food that fungi like to eat comes in packaging that's hard to open. So these germ tubes have evolved ways to break through barriers. Look at this one, busts right through the cell wall of a plant using chemicals and force. And once it's in, starts making
Yes,
a series
chemicals
of tubes
and
that start
force.
munching. This right here is Natotonus, a bit of an unusual spore because it can swim with the aid of its spore boner. Jerry, it's a flagellum. Anyway, this
It's
fungus
fucking
has these
jello.
tiny worms called nematodes, which are everywhere. Here you can see a whole bunch of spores clustered around the nematode's anus. As is the custom,
As
The
is
nematodes
the
anus.
custom.
germ tubes that enter the body, and then the
As
fungus
is
can
the
eat the nematodes from
custom.
the inside out. Remember, try and see
Island
things
is
from the
of this
fungi's
game.
perspective.
What is the most
Once
iconic
it's
island?
done eating, it's time to make some babies. Here you can see
Babies.
spores being formed and then pushed out through those
I
tubes.
honestly think it's
These
this one
spores
right
can
here. I
swim,
think it's
and
snuggled
nematodes are
there.
plentiful,
It's
so the fungus doesn't
I
have to
think
get
it's
too fancy
it's
about
where the
how
door
and where
takes
they're
place.
released. But most spores
think
aren't
it's one of the
particularly
most
gifted
iconic.
in moving. So it's quite
I
important
think
that they
it was
wind up
introduced
close
when
to
the
whatever
game
it is they
first came
eat.
out. I think it's one of
Fungi
the
have
first
evolved a
islands.
number of clever ways to
They
get the
also
spores to the
where the
right
tutorial
place.
takes
But
place,
perhaps
though.
the cleverest way is getting the food itself to
pretty
help
iconic.
out. The genus Entomophthora, for example,
My God,
likes
this little
to eat
kid.
flies. These flies here are
Huh?
infected, but unlike that nematode, they're not dead.
He's like,
Yet.
which island do you think's the most iconic?
What?
He's like, I think it's this one we're at now, Smuggler's Bay.
Oh.
I think it was one of the first islands ever added. I don't have the heart to tell him they were all added at the same time.
Oh. Pat, pat, pat. Sweet theme.
Entomophora starts off as these specialized little spores called conidia, which are quite sticky, especially when they come in contact with the outside covering of a fly. Like before, they use a germ tube to create a hole in the outside of the insect. The contents of the spore then go into the insect's blood. or hemolymph.
Spores wholly
The fungus
screwed.
just
I love that.
Like before, they use a germ tube to create a hole in the
Wait,
outside of the
Morgan.
insect. The contents of the spore
The what?
Spores holes screwed.
Go find stuff
I love that. That's great.
then go into the
kidding. See
insect's blood or hemolymph. At first, the fungus just nibbles a little bit, avoiding vital organs and targeting fat cells. Their backside starts to fill up with the fungus, which takes on a creamy white appearance. Nasty. But other than that, they seem fine, doing all the fly things that a fly do. But the fungus is up to something else. After about 48 hours or so, Entomophora cells start entering the fly's brain. As the number of cells in the brain increase, they seem to target a group of neurons involved in the fly's sleep-wake cycle, or circadian cycle. The science hippies know this because the fly's brain is small enough that they've been able to map it out in quite some detail. On the day the fly will die, just around sunset, and yes, fungi can tell time, it's crazy, those cells in the brain seem to trigger the fly to release juvenile hormone. This in turn creates a burst of energy in the fly. Oddly, around the same time, the fly stops flying. From here on in, don't call it a fly, call it a walk. Kill me. I mean, look at this poor bastard. Not only is he about to die, he's getting chased around by a giant paintbrush. All this
I'm going
hormone
to put it
energy
where
in the
we
not
came
flying
on.
seems to
Okay.
generally cause the fly to go up or summit. When it is suitably heighted, the fly then extends its mouth parts or proboscis. By now, the fly isn't in very good shape, so it's all a bit shaky. Now, they don't know who makes it, either the fly or the fungus, but this adhesive starts leaking out the proboscis, which glues the fly's mouth parts to the surface. And now the fly is stuck. With the fly firmly in place, the fungus can now eat all the things that it's been patiently avoiding.
Ooh.
Organs, the
I
testes,
found one, I
we
found
save
it,
those
Jeff.
for last. And in one
there's
final
only four now.
manipulation, the
It
fungus
gets
causes
rid
the
of them
fly
when
to raise
Okay,
its
that's good,
wings
actually
to
gets
get
rid
them
of
out of the way for what happens next.
Explode?
With its food source depleted, the fungus is now ready to
Yeah.
make some babies. Here you can see it engulf what remains of
babies.
the fly. And if you look close near the top, you can see the spores hitting the glass of the camera lens.
Ooh.
The fungus creates these specialized structures
Wait,
called
wait, I need to see that
conidiaphores,
again.
the remains of the fly. And if you look close near the
Yeah,
top, you
what
can
the
see the
fuck?
spores
Yeah,
hitting the
they
glass
get
of the
burnt
camera lens.
out.
The
It's
fungus
so
creates these
disgusting.
specialized structures called
Ew.
conidiaphores. You can see them emerge
Ew.
here in silhouette. They're little stalks with spores all over them, which then get shoved off by a liquid
Aw, little
fan,
Joe.
shooting those little sticky conidia
Ew,
spores in
it's
all
so cool.
directions. And check this out. If the spore lands on a part of a fly that it can't infect, like a wing, it can create its own spore cannon and fire off another spore. Sporeception. Now imagine
Sporeception.
you're an uninfected fly in the area. These deadly spores popping off in all
Explode.
directions. I mean, it's pretty grim, but it actually gets worse. In the process of making these spores, compounds are secreted that are essentially sexual signals, causing other flies to come over and try to have sex with the corpse. I know what you're thinking. What's so bad about that? Remember the sticky stuff that glued
Wicked
the mouth parts to the surface? Well, it didn't just come out the mouth
Oh, did you
parts.
kill someone?
So if you try to have sex with this corpse, you get stuck to it. And now not only are you infected, but you've got some explaining to do when you go to work tomorrow. You know, Dave from accounting's gonna say something like, "Ooh, looks like you had an interesting weekend." And you're like, "Yes, it was a nice weekend, Dave." Went antiquing, planted some
it said,
herbs, f***ed a corpse, and
Angled
did some light
skeletons,
spring cleaning.
49
Thank you very much. Freaking Dave.
Hey.
Listen, when these zombie fungi come for us, we're going to need the skills to fight back. The kind of
I'm
skills
not
you
coming to
can
you
learn
to
at
help.
brilliant.org. I mean, if movies have taught me, but also,
Where are you at?
the genus eats
I
all
think they're
sorts of
going RDM.
insects. But Ophiocordyceps unilateralis is particularly
Oh,
good at
cool.
manipulating carpenter ants.
Oh,
The
you
end of the
focused on-
infection is a lot
I
like
thought that was a
Entomophora. The ant goes up,
Snake's
then its
gone,
mouth
by the
parts
way.
are attached to a leaf or a twig, and then the fungus kills them and makes babies. The resulting ant looks a bit like Maleficent on a bad hair day. But how the
If you
fungus
see
does
a
it
snake-
evolved independently and seems to be very different.
the
For one,
harmonica.
unlike Entomophora, Ophiocordyceps cells don't enter the brain. They do, however, seem to secrete compounds that hijack the ant's central nervous system. Now, it can be hard to figure out what part the fungus is
I'm
doing and
hungry,
what part
chicken.
is just the ant being really f***ing sick. But it's pretty clear as the infection spreads, the ant is a bit broken. It starts staggering around and convulses, which means that it falls. Would be very embarrassing for a healthy ant, but it's thought that this falling
eating
helps
raw
make sure
food
that
bad?
the ant doesn't get too far up in the trees, and instead will stay closer to the forest floor for what happens next. Now,
Think
on
it
its
is.
final day, this wobbly ant goes out and finds itself a leaf or a twig above the forest floor. The fungus needs the ant to attach itself very
Oh, why is
firmly,
the
but
screen
it doesn't
blurry?
use glue. This fungus takes
Everything's
over control
blurred.
of the ant's mouth parts. Here, this is crazy. This is what a healthy muscle cell in an ant's mandible looks like. You can even see the motor neurons coming in and connecting to it. And here's what the muscle looks like when it's infected. Those are fungal cells that have surrounded the muscle. But they don't just surround the muscle, the fungal cells start connecting to each other. And then some of them connect into the muscle itself. It's like a poorly knit sweater of fungus. If you slice through a section of the ant's jaw, you can see that the fungus is friggin' everywhere.
So
So
cool.
when it's time to get the ant to bite down, the fungus seems to be very much in control of the machinery. On a leaf, the bite is almost always around that center vein. And it's deep. Those are the bite marks. As the ant bites, the fungus destroys the muscle tissue, which makes it impossible for the ant to ever let go.
Come to
At
me,
this
I need
height
my
off the
help. I need
forest
some
floor,
help,
the
man.
conditions are
Come
just
to me.
right for the fungus to take its time. Over the next week or so, the fungus consumes what's left to be eaten, and
Hey,
then
man,
sends up
can
a
you come
stalk
to
or
me? I
fruiting
need some
body from
help.
just behind the head. And from here, the spores are released, ready to find an ant of their own to love and kill. Now, here's the thing. Those two stories were kind of nice compared to this one. Fungi in the genus Massospora, which is a dad joke time bomb, have a taste for cicadas. Now, some cicadas are around every year, but some species
Cicadas.
only come up every 13
Cicadas
to
look so
17
cool
years. All
when
of
they
them.
hatch.
They are.
And for a fungus that likes to eat them, that's a buffet worth waiting for. For those 13 to
Cool.
17 years, the cicada lives underground as a
Sound
nymph. Spores of the
awful
fungus
though.
can
They're like
also be found in that soil.
super loud.
As these cicada nymphs begin to emerge,
Yeah, I had
some
a
of them are
little
infected.
cicada fly
Getting
into
right to
me,
it,
and
the
they're
fungus eats away the cicada's
gigantic.
abdomen and sexual organs, which apparently they can live without. Then it
Fucking
creates a whole bunch
big
of
beans.
chlamydia which form a sort of
How did
plug
you
back
figure it
there.
out?
You could say their back end is a Massospora. I
Not
told
that you're
you.
not a skeletal
These little
anymore.
canidia are specially designed to quickly infect other cicadas. Now, you might think that having a half body riddled with fungus would be a
You're
bit
not
of a
scaly
red
one
flag in the
anymore. I
dating
can
world.
see
But
your
the fungus
actual
has some
skin and
tricks.
it looks
Some
cool.
species of
your
Massospora pump the
shovel. Can I
cicada
look at your
full of
shovel?
psilocybin, which is the
How did you
hallucinogenic
get that
compound
skin?
in magic mushrooms. And it also
They
creates
drug
caffeine, which is a
them.
stimulant. So the infected
What?
cicadas are the life of the party.
What?
Todd, what happened to your ass?
The
Who
clothing shop?
cares?
Do you know
Woo!
what a clothing shop
The fungus also does something else that's
That's
quite
fun.
sneaky. It somehow manipulates infected male cicadas into changing their mating call,
money
which
store.
normally
What's
sounds
That's
the
so
like
funny.
this,
Who cares?
to sound like a female cicada, which sounds like this.
You like the cheapos? What's the thing? Like
I mean, the bottom line is that the
General
fungus
clothing
is able
shop,
to trick a lot of
the
cicadas into
weapons
dry
place.
humping the canidia. And these little canidia start to infect their host's
Tell me
butt.
what it
Sorry,
is.
their hosts, but in a different way. The fungus of these canidia-infected cicadas will also devour the abdomen and genitals of their
Like it's
hosts.
backing
But
away.
instead
Like
of
no, no,
creating
no.
more canidia and trying to infect even more adults, they fill up what used to be the abdomen with these
Hey, what
thick-shelled
happened to me, bro?
spores. These infected cicadas
No,
act
no, no,
basically
no.
normal. However, in going about their
What do you-
business, they rain
No,
these
no,
thick-shelled
no, no.
spores down onto the ground below,
Then it should
where
be
they will
around
wait
here.
for another 13 to 17
people
years
look at
to
the map
infect the
now
next
and-
cycle.
Can you
Yeah,
people
so
hold
that's
this
how they
map
do
up?
it.
Wait, I
So-
got this. Wait,
Yeah.
So rude.
dude.
I mean, it's hard to root for the
Kill the
fungus
snake.
on this one.
Yeah?
So
Really?
come over here and help me kill
Athlete's
it.
foot is a fungus, you
Slash
know
it.
that? Eats keratin, which is in our
Thank
skin and
Huh.
nails. And that's the scouting party.
I think that's
It's
a
just a
good-
matter of
That's a good
time.
way of taking
I
down
tell you what,
snakes.
I'm gonna
if you
cinch
have
my
multiple
pants
people.
real tight.
Someone plays the music
Can't
and
make
someone
my ass
slashes.
fall off. I mean, the movies get it all wrong. Zombies
the
are just
map
gonna
say
be
right here
people all
somewhere?
hopped up on mushrooms and cocaine trying to get you to hump a powder ball that ate their junk.
God,
No, it always
I
looks like
didn't
that. They got little
watch
sprinkles
this
falling
video. I
out
watched
there.
this
This
alone.
episode sponsored by Hunter King.
What?
I watched this one alone. Animal Awards.
To the True Facts Animal Awards. celebrating animals with
Can you
awards.
tell me where it is? Because
Johnny, that's an
I've only
gravitas.
dug up like 2
Whatever.
treasures. I want to dig
In the
up at least
category
3.
of best worst jumping,
That's
there
my
are quite a
pride
few entries.
possession.
I mean, come on, it's not rocket science to be awesome at being terrible at jumping. In fact, rocket science would really screw you in this category. A notable entry was the globular snailtail. It's a great launch, looks quite acrobatic, all tucked in like that, full rotations, and then he takes it right on the face. Look at him sliding away. Keep cool, they'll think it's on purpose. But if you want to win this category, you have to go up against frogs in the genus
I
Brachycephus.
love frog
Granted,
jumps
it's
that
not
jump
bad,
with their
but it's kind
legs
of fun
out.
for bad jumping. They're not happy about
The
it. and some of them
lane
have
with their
glow-in-the-dark
legs out.
bones.
It's so
Why not be famous for that? But the deal with Brachycephus
Flop.
is that they really went all in
Mm.
on the miniaturization thing.
Look at it.
And tiny. Some of the smallest vertebrates
I
on
love
Earth.
little frogs.
Bravo. But to get that small, they
Look at the
sacrifices.
tiny,
They might
tiny
be famous for that.
freaky.
But the deal with Brachycephus is that they really went all in on the miniaturization thing. They're f***ing tiny. Some of the smallest vertebrates
They're
on
fucking
Earth.
tiny.
That one. Look at that one. He looks angry.
I love the little angry frogs. They're so fucking cute.
He's like, no, I don't want to. I love it. I want the tiny frog. He has such a tiny little legs and little tiny face.
Run,
Well,
run,
but to
run.
get that
Put it
small,
on
there's
ship.
sacrifices. They lost some toes and fingers along
It's
the way.
okay.
There's a couple species that seem to have
And then
lost the
come back
ability
for
to
me
hear
and
their
mow
own
too.
mating calls,
What
which is
are
a
you?
bit poetically heartbreaking. I mean, the deal is that some equipment just doesn't scale down all that well.
Oh.
In particular, there's
they're
this little
fighting each
organ that
other.
vertebrates have made of 3 loops that stick out in different directions.
It's okay, we
inside
love
the
them
ear.
anyway.
When accelerating, fluid
Let's go
inside
fight
those
that
We
thing,
loops
okay?
stand
flush
frogs
around
in
and
this
trigger little
household.
sensory
Wanna go fight
hairs,
that
which
thing?
help the
Yeah,
brain figure out how
we
to
do.
balance
We're
and
gonna need the
maintain posture.
treasure, so let's
Turns
just
out
All
find
there's
of
a
them.
limit to how small you can shrink
What are
this
you
before
doing?
the
It
system
still
breaks
works.
down.
Nope, nope, nope,
So
nope,
when they
nope.
jump, their little
Look
bodies
Look
aren't
at
getting
it.
information
Jump.
about what the hell's happening. So the best strategy seems to be stiffen up and
Oh.
stretch out.
Jump.
Staying big helps reduce the rotations. But it
Coconut.
turns
So
out
good.
that Brachycephalus isn't the only group of frogs that have a complicated relationship
Like they
with
just
the
forgot
jump.
how to
That's
jump.
Let's
bomb,
remind
that's
ourselves
the-
what
that's a
normal frog
bomb.
jumping looks like.
They
This
just
is
forgot to
albino
name the
orientalis.
landing.
A nice looking jump, and then the
It
arms
looks like
come
something
forward to
different.
brace for
Can you
impact,
see it?
and the hind legs kind of follow through. The end result being that it's
Somewhat. It's like a bit laggy, but I can kind of see it.
how it's supposed to be done.
Like-
Now there's a group of
How
frogs
many
in the
blocks
genus
is it
Leontoma
in
that
the store?
split off from other frogs about 200 million years ago. Let's take a look
Look
at
at
their
this
form.
one.
See if we can spot the difference.
Look at him.
Here's another one. I'm sure you don't think it's one drunk frog.
They just
That's a tough
they
Right,
just
probably
forgot
wouldn't
how
have
to
followed.
stick the
So it's thought that the
landing.
taking off part of jumping evolved first as an escape mechanism into
They
water.
just
A landing bit
forgot to
evolved
do
later
the
when frogs became
landing.
more
It's
terrestrial.
great.
These old school frogs never really got into jumping and never evolved a way to gracefully land. But
It's
still,
so
no
good.